With the announcement of HBO's new adaptation of Stephen King's It, I decided it was time for my yearly rewatch of Andy Muschietti's film by the same name. As I watched, something dawned on me. I forgot to feed the Bigfoot I keep in my backyard, and now I can't find my dog. It was a lot better than I remembered. In fact, it's probably one of the best horror movies of the 21st century. No, I'm not kidding. Credit to King for coming up with the idea, but Muschietti's vision did it a solid. It cut out a lot of the fluff from the book, particularly one scene that every adaptation in the book's history has had the good sense to leave in the gutter. If you know, you know. It also makes the story accessible to a new generation without falling into the trap of being totally rewritten for modern sensibilities. But the heart of the film is the story it tells. It is a spiraling epic of bravery, regret, and friendship set against the backdrop of growing up. Every element enriches the story, and you can be sure that it'll have you checking behind the curtains after the credits roll. Today, I'm going to dig into the film and share why it stands head and shoulders above other editions that have attempted to build from the same book, and I'll do so by comparing it to the only other relevant version, the Tim Curry one from 1990. Consider this your obligatory spoiler and trigger warning, but I'll try to keep it light on details for both counts. Grab a red balloon and settle in. First though, I want to say that it is a dumb name. Okay, moving on. Derry, Maine has a busy history of tragedy. From the original European colony vanishing, which King admits was inspired by Roanoke Island if you didn't make that connection, to a factory exploding, to the curse besetting the town at the time we peer into the world. Children disappearing. Our story starts with a young Georgie Denborough playing with a paper boat in the rain until it falls into a sewer. Inside is a clown named Pennywise, who tricks Georgie into reaching for his boat before dragging him down. In the wake of the loss, our leading man, Georgie's older brother Bill, is not doing so well. With the help of 6 friends named Eddie, Richie, Beverly, Ben, Mike, and Stanley, Bill spends his summer searching for Georgie in the sewers while evading his bully, Henry Bowers. As the gang searches for Georgie, they learn about Derry's insane history and begin piecing things together. It turns out that the city is home to a primordial evil that comes out of hiding every 27 years so it can feed on the residents' fear before going back into hibernation. It changes into a person's worst fear, which is definitely not where J.K. Rowling got the idea for Bogart, so why would you even think that? To extract maximum fear seasoning. The creature defaults as a clown because it's easier to get children to trust in than, say, a walking corpse or what have you, and it prefers children because they're easier to scare. Seems like a contradictory strategy, but whatever. The kids, who call themselves the Scooby Gang, the Losers Club, also see fit to give this ancient monstrosity the horrifying moniker of It. Wow, they should work for CNN and Fox with that kind of creative prowess. Pennywise knows that the Losers Club is onto him and goes all out trying to get them to quit. He manipulates Henry Bowers into doing his dirty work, faces each kid with their deepest fear, and even terrorizes them together. However, like me stashing bricks of cocaine in my nemesis' houses and then calling the police with an anonymous tip, these kids don't know when to let up. They track Pennywise to his lair and get their butts kicked, because tackling an interdimensional entity on its own territory is not as easy as it looks, and this movie isn't going to do its cast any favors. Good. Pennywise then kidnaps Beverly because she isn't afraid of him, and therefore poses the biggest threat. Ironically, this helps Bill, and by extension the others, into going back to rescue Beverly. This time, they stand a real chance, and the ensuing battle is both bigger and more dire. I won't tell you how it ends, because why spoil the fun? If you didn't notice, there's a lot going on in this movie. That's even after leaving way more than half of the source material on the cutting room floor. Probably the most controversial production decision Muschietti made was to divide his adaptation into 2 separate films. The book flits between the losers as children and the survivors as adults, and the 1990 Tim Curry version keeps the same format. Muschietti has the first movie focus entirely on the losers as kids and the second one on them as adults. Personally, I think it was the right call. It gave filmmakers time to develop the story without cramming 1,153 pages into just over 2 hours of film. However, the 1991 did give a more complete picture of the story without having to finance a second movie. Then there are the hundreds of cases where It 2017 deviates from the book. Hey, what do you know? Changing major story structure means that you have to get deep into the woods to make a square peg fit into a round hole. To its credit, however, the movie does its homework and mostly eliminates continuity issues. The next thing to examine is cast performances. Tim Curry and Bill Skarsgård are both geniuses in their own right when it comes to this role, but their performances are about as different as North and South. Some anonymous hopeful soul put it better than I ever could. Curry played a creepy clown. Skarsgård played something pretending to be a clown. That, for me, is the deciding factor as to which Pennywise was a better portrayal. You'd never know that Skarsgård isn't a method actor from watching this movie. Did you know that thing he does with his eye is real? That's commitment. but let it be known that cosmetically, Curry's version was a dead ringer for King's book description. As far as the rest of the cast is concerned, yeah, there's a clear winner for me. The Losers Club is canonically comprised of 10 and 11-year-olds, which is much more believable in the 1991. The danger in hiring actual children, however, is that they aren't always up to the task. The actors have plenty of good moments, but the overall performances are often wooden. This isn't limited to the kids either. The adults in this cast are as stiff as their young counterparts. My best guess is that this was done to keep a consistent tone, but it wasn't the correct one, so mission accomplished? Not that I could do any better, but hey, at least I know it. Compare this to 2017, where all the characters have been aged up by 3 to 5 years. The performances are better across the board, but I have a hard time picturing these literal teenagers trying to figure out long division before recess. The big trophy here goes to the script. I already love most versions of the story because they maintain the core of what it is. For example, most horror movies have the villain haunting the hapless souls chosen to be victims for most of the story, but it looks stupid because either the villain should have attacked or the main character should have called the police. It, however, bypasses this problem by making its villain super powerful, which isn't super unique, but then giving him a motive for not finishing off his victim straight away. This being, of course, the need to acquire that tasty, tasty fear. It, however, bypasses this problem by making its villain overpowered, which isn't super unique, but then giving him an actual motive for not finishing off his victim straight away. That being, of course, the need to acquire that tasty, tasty terror. 2017's retelling reigns over the bunch for me. It's the most streamlined and effective, and it really helps to make the narrative feel more natural. One of the best changes was to have Georgie disappear into the sewer rather than be found dead in the street like in the book. It provides incentive for the Losers Club to go into the sewers rather than have to triangulate Pennywise's past cycles just to reach the same conclusion, and it allows things to kick into gear sooner. Ace is all, but there's only one thing I really care about, and that's character. If I can't believe the people who populate your story, I can't buy into it. Period. Simply put, this movie has good characters. The ones that are core to the story have enough screen time to acquaint you with them, but the spotlight is kept on Bill. Each of the kids has their own fears and hang-ups, which gives us an insight into their individual strengths and weaknesses so that we can understand what changes when they're together. It also allows Pennywise to vary his act a little, which is good because you can only get hit with scary clown jump scares so many times before you start scrolling through social media. Seeing as I'm on the topic, let's talk about Pennywise. No matter whose take he appears in, he is sinister to boot, and that is because King wrote a stellar antagonist. When it comes to your horror movies, you want the villain to be scary, sure, but you also want them to represent the protagonist's struggles. That is why The Ring works, but The Visit completely flopped. The genius of Pennywise, and it as a whole unit, is that it strips this concept down to the bones and builds it back up to be its own character. What could have easily been an exposition mobile is treated with respect by the writers and as a legitimate threat by our heroes. Really, they have no choice, because it is literally inhabiting the form of their most debilitating fears and regrets. I mean, he certainly had 12-year-old me shaking like a Spirit Airlines plane. Pennywise himself doesn't have much depth, but he doesn't need to. It's this elusive achievement that makes him the quintessential horror villain, and it, the redefining work of the genre. If you can't find the flaws with something, you're idolizing it, and by no stretch of the imagination is this a perfect film. Obviously, it has very graphic content, so young audiences should steer wide and clear of it. It's also only like 40% accurate to the book. Pennywise doesn't look anything like he's described to, and some members of the Losers Club needed more development. Anything that even resembled characterization for Richie was chucked clean out the window because at least one of those kids needed to be scared of clowns, and I guess the one from Stranger Things drew the short straw. He's only there to spew what passes as comedy in the eyes of the writers, and no part of the plot would have changed had he been absent from the film altogether. All other things being equal, I'm calling this one a win. It 2017 sets out to tell a simplified version of a very popular story, and that is what it does. It boasts a well-suited cast and crew, including a competent director who knew right what he was going for. It seems to be dying breed lately. Viewers can expect plenty of jump scares and creepy monsters, some genuinely moving moments between the heroes, and lead up for a sequel that I may or may not cover down the line depending on how this video fares. Either way, consider adding this to your watch list if you haven't caught it yet, because it's pretty solid. It's my favorite. But I admit that I might be a little biased due to it being the first version I watched. What's wild to me is that this movie was so well made, I forgot it was a remake until I was writing the script for this video. In an age of cinema dominated by sequels, prequels, spin-offs, reboots, and the dreaded remake, it's easy to forget that sometimes, just sometimes, a film that falls into one of these categories can be made with care and intent. If three screenwriters I've never heard of sharing a vision with the guy responsible for the fluff piece that is the Electric State can deliver a promising remake in the last decade, then there's hope for anybody. Point of all this being that the two It movies were released 27 years apart, and if that doesn't put a smile on your face, I don't know what will.